Returning now to Brexit, Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn have met for talks. In fact, they're meeting right now over how to break the stalemate in the House of Commons. Mrs May told MPs it was their refusal to back her Brexit deal which has led her to pursue a compromise with the opposition. Nonetheless, the cross-party talks have angered Conservative Brexiteers, with one minister resigning this morning. Joined by the leader of the European Research Group, the Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg. Mr Rees-Mogg, thank you so much for joining us on the programme this afternoon. You heard what the Welsh minister had to say. He said he cannot in any way condone working with a Marxist. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a mistake to try and think that Jeremy Corbyn will be the answer to Brexit. The problem is that both Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party and Theresa May and a lot of her top team backed Remain. So in this effort to find a compromise, who is representing the 17.4 million people who voted to leave? I think it's a fundamental problem of democracy at the moment, and the people are against Parliament. Parliament is about 2/3 Remain and only 1/3 leave, whereas the British people voted by 52% to leave.
But we are where we are. There is an impasse unless we have a deal that looks as though it can get through by next Wednesday. We are likely to crash out without a deal. Crash out, I know you'll pick me up on that. That is the phraseology used by some Remainers. Do you think that that's acceptable?
I would never dream of picking you up because you're an impeccably impartial interviewer. But I think crashing out is precisely the wrong term, that there is a system outside the European Union. Most countries in the world trade very successfully without being members of the European Union. We would move to that basis of trading, WTO terms as it's known. A lot of effort has been made to ensure that we're prepared, but equally important, the EU has made steps to ensure that it's prepared as well for us leaving in a few days, and that's what should now happen. And interestingly, that's what Parliament legislated for. We're often told that Parliament won't sanction no deal, but Parliament passed two laws that provided for no deal, the Article 50 Act and the Withdrawal Act.
You're trying to suggest it would be a smooth transition, though, Mr Rees-Mogg, and fundamentally, according to many who move livestock or whatever else to the European Union, they say that's not true. I heard a farmer on the radio over the weekend saying that if we did come out of the European Union without a deal, that 3 million lambs would have to be slaughtered. Could you have that on your conscience?
Well, those are lambs that are going to be slaughtered anyway because they're going to be eaten. So it's not any different whether they're slaughtered in the UK or elsewhere. And actually, it's the meat that is at issue, not the lambs themselves. In those circumstances, you're absolutely right. One of the areas that would be affected by tariffs, most particularly, is lamb. And I think we would have to take steps to compensate lamb farmers. And you're right to highlight that there are some areas where there would be particular difficulties, and those are areas where the government would be able to use some of the £39 billion that we would save to ensure that there was compensation for people affected. But most businesses would carry on in exactly the same way. We import goods from outside the European Union through Southampton with a clearance time of 6 seconds. There doesn't need to be a long delay at ports of entry.
But you know that that 39 billion is certainly up for debate, whether or not we would actually get that money or not. We've had that conversation many times. I'm just wanting to pick you up on it. As far as tariffs are concerned, you know, there would be huge tariffs, we're told, 35% on dairy products and the like coming into the United Kingdom. And food prices would go up, if I might just make this point, food prices up by something like 10%.
No, that's under our control. That would only happen if the government decided that it wished to impose tariffs on goods coming in, which would be a silly thing to do. And the government has set out a system of tariffs which would ensure that food prices remained basically stable, because it would cut some tariffs from the rest of the world and put some tariffs on the EU. But also there would be displacement of supply. Bear in mind, the Irish agricultural industry is almost entirely dependent on its trade with the UK, and therefore there would be a very good reason for both sides to have some sensible tariff arrangement.
So what you're saying is no deal would be better than trying to do a deal that might involve customs union or Common Market 2.0 and a deal with Labour?
Well, I think a customs union and Common Market 2.0 don't deliver on the referendum result to leave the European Union. And I think it's surprising that a Prime Minister who said quite clearly that the Leader of the Opposition was unfit to govern last week thinks that he should practically be Deputy Prime Minister this week. I'm not sure that's an approach I would recommend.
She has said that she has finally decided to put the country rather than the party first. What are you doing?
Oh, I'm putting the country first, but I'm putting democracy first. You see, I trust the people. The people voted to leave, 17.4 million of them, a majority. And I think the people know best. I don't think Whitehall mandarins know best. I don't think politicians know best. I think the British people know best. And that Parliament should be delivering on the referendum result and not lecturing people, frightening people, and trying to overturn the referendum result and avoid leaving.
Is it time for it to go now?
Well, as you may remember, I think you interviewed me at the time. I was involved in a vote of no confidence against her at the end of last year. I lost that, and therefore it's not for me to get involved in her leadership at the moment. That she won, and therefore she deserves my support.
We have had this conversation, and it isn't wholehearted, is it? It isn't fulsome support.
Well, fulsome is one of those interesting words, but she has my support that she's the best Prime Minister we've got.
Damning with faint praise, who would you prefer?
Well, the Tory party is fortunately full to the brim with able people who would make brilliant leaders of the party, and indeed Prime Ministers. I think Boris Johnson is ahead of the pack. I think he has the greatest connection with voters, was able to win in London twice, basically in a Labour city. So I happen to think Boris is the most impressive of a very strong field.
Okay. If we see a Cooper motion that is voted on in the House of Commons, goes to the House of Lords, come back again, potentially it could be law by the middle of next week. And as a result, that would mean that we would not leave the European Union unless there was a deal. I'm guessing you're not going to be voting in favour of that.
No, but it's not quite what the bill says at the moment. What the bill says at the moment is the Prime Minister would have to ask for an extension. The EU wouldn't necessarily have to grant an extension, so it's not going quite as far as you suggest. Though the people promoting it, Yvette Cooper, Oliver Letwin and so on, are basically trying to stop us leaving the European Union. That is the aim of the proponents of this bill.
Okay, so you think that the European Union could well vote against that? It doesn't look that way at the moment, does it?
No, but this bill merely says that we must ask for an extension, and we may ask for an extension that is different from the one that the EU wants to give. It's not quite as straightforward as suspending our departure, though, of course, that could be done. It is possible to revoke Article 50, though that would be a grave error and deeply undemocratic.
Yeah, it would be potentially an extension of some length, depending on what we asked for and what the European Union offered. So you don't fancy that one. What about if we saw a proposal put forward by the Leader of the Opposition, by our Prime Minister, and by potentially the SNP and representatives from Wales as well? Would you vote against that too?
Well, it depends what it says.
Well,
I mean, if it were to say that we should leave on the 12th of April, I might support it, but
yeah,
I
but it's not
doubt
going to
that's
say
going to
that,
be the
though,
case.
is it, Mr. Rees-Mogg?
Well, we've got to wait and see. Miss Burley, I can't be sure of how I'll vote until I know what the motions are.
OK, OK, fine. I'll give you that one. But I'm guessing it's not going to say that we leave by the 12th of April, because it doesn't look as though where we are where we are, that we are likely to be leaving on the 12th of April with any kind of deal. You are saying that we should leave whatever.
Oh, I think you're absolutely spot on. Yes, that is what I'm saying. I think that's what people voted for. We've been through this process. We haven't managed to agree to a deal. There is an opportunity to leave. It should be grasped, and we should make the most of it. There's a huge benefit from leaving and being free from the failed European economic model, and that's something we should grasp and look forward to, rather than timorously cowering away from it.
And a series of indicative votes potentially coming back again next week, given that they're probably just a variation on a theme of the ones we've seen already. They're not going to appeal to you either.
Well, they were a great success recently, weren't they, with Parliament unable to vote in favour of anything at all. I mean, it seems if you asked Parliament to vote on this today, well, without the Cabinet voting, so it would probably have failed by more, but every single thing put before the House of Commons failed. So the